On today's Locked On Texan podcast, whose stock has fallen, whose stock has risen, who's going to make this team, and who's not? That's what we're talking about on today's Locked On Texan podcast.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to this Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texan podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I am your host, John, some sports guy Hickman, and of course, joining me each and every day, your Texan credentialed media member, Sports Illustrated's own. You see him dancing over there. If you're not watching on YouTube, he's doing a little dance, little Dougie.
Yes, sir.
Cody Davis here to discuss some Texan football. Whose stock is falling on this team? Who's in jeopardy of not making this team? Who's on a bubble and maybe their stock is rising? We're going to look at that. But Cody, no joint practices for the Houston Texans this week as they prepare for their third preseason game against the New Orleans Saints, your hometown team.
Yes, sir.
DeMeco Ryans, kind of plainly put it, they have some things that they want to just kind of shore up, right? Got some nagging injuries. You don't want to put your team in jeopardy of getting hurt against another franchise. And overall, I'm pretty sure some calls were made to the league offices about Christian Harris fighting everybody. But it's a serious conversation. What's going on with the Houston Texans? No joint practices. What's next for this team as they prepare for the Saints?
Well, John, as you put it, Coach DeMeco Ryans did say part of the reason why him and the Saints came with the mutual decision to not have joint practices is because both teams are dealing with nagging injuries. And when you look at the Houston Texans as a whole, they have a couple players banged up. Christian Kersey, Brevin Jordan, Titus Howard, they have missed, in terms of Christian Kersey and Brevin Jordan, they have missed almost the entire training camp. We all know Titus Howard dealing with the hand injury. Tank Dell did not play on Saturday due to leg tightness. As a matter of fact, on Monday, Coach DeMeco Ryans was asked if he had an update on Tank Dell. He said no, but he still believes that Tank Dell is going to be fine. And defensive end Chase Winovich is another guy who is dealing with nagging injuries. So Ryans came out and said with no joint practices against the New Orleans Saints that they will use this entire week to go through a quote-unquote normal in-season game week, which in my eyes means the end of training camp. And that means that the Houston Texans are going to go through this entire rest of the week as a normal regular season week, which means that us media, we will not be out there for the entire practice. No longer. We will only be out there for like the first 30 to 35 minutes for roll call, for stretching periods, and to see the team go through their warm-up. However, once they start their group install, we will have to walk inside NRG Stadium and wait for practice to be over. So, John, listeners and viewers, once again, as I put it, training camp is over. Over the next couple of days, John and myself, we will be taking a look at players, stocks who have risen, stocks who have fallen, with the 53-man roster set on next Tuesday. However, John, listeners and viewers, the number one question on everybody's mind is, what does this mean for the Houston Texans for their final preseason game against the Saints? At first, I was on board with not having the starters and all the main players play. However, and John, I want you to take it over. When you have a rookie quarterback in CJ Stroud, you're not going to have the joint practice against the New Orleans Saints, which that means he's going to miss an opportunity to go through his read with a different defensive scheme. Should the Houston Texans at least throw CJ Stroud out there for another half like we saw Saturday against the Miami Dolphins? Me personally, I think there is a huge benefit for CJ Stroud and the rest of those young players to go out there and play at least half of the games. I understand everybody is concerned about injuries. However, I don't want the scare of injuries kind of get into the way of the growth and development of a rookie quarterback who's basically going to be starting week 1 for this organization.
I'm with it, man. That was a topic of discussion for me on Twitter on Monday. Like I put that out there. Should CJ play in this third preseason game? I've got some yeses. I got some nos. I got a lot of good yeses. So shout out to those guys. But overall, I believe he should be playing. I do. Listen, CJ isn't a 3, 4, 5 year vet, right? He isn't one of those guys where the time off isn't that necessary, right? He needs that. He's going to need this time to get out on that field, I believe, and get those reps in with his teammates. And so, again, I'm looking at CJ as a guy that at a combined of 16 passing attempts so far in his first 2 preseason games, 4 in game 1, 12 in game 2. Both of those games were he had a very good drive going into that second quarter where you would like to see that pass that he tried to fit in, I believe, to Noah Brown, get caught, but it was a very good defensive play on the defender. Forget his name. That stopped the drive, and then Houston kicked for 3. But if you look at that game, guys, I'm talking about 16 total passing attempts, but in game 2 against the Miami Dolphins, the very first quarter, the time of possession was fairly even between the two teams. I think like 7-20 and 7. Like it wasn't too off. That second quarter, the Houston Texans only had the ball for roughly 4 minutes. And that defense did not do a good job when they had multiple occasions of getting off the field, allowing the Houston Texans first team offense to get back on the field and make some plays. They didn't do so. I told you guys the defensive numbers for the Monday show, right? They had 4 drives of 80 or more yards. A lot of third down and fourth down conversions throughout the game. So CJ didn't get the ball back. And when he did, well, couldn't hold on to the ball, right? Guys was dropping balls. And so he didn't get a good opportunities from everybody else that could have given him that opportunity. So I want to see him take advantage of the opportunity that he has by playing in a third preseason game, because you're not a 10-year vet. You're not an 8-year vet, not a 5-year vet. You are a rookie. And I want to also see him get some opportunities with the other rookies in real time. I'm a believer and fan of real-time repetition, guys. So I want to see CJ get some first-team snaps with Tank Dell, get some first-team snaps with John Mechie, get some first-team opportunities with Xavier Hutchinson. If Jared Wayne can play, because I believe he's maybe still battling that hamstring injury. If he can play, get him some opportunity. And the thing is, let me not say first team, because Larry Tunsil won't be playing in that third preseason game. Shaq Mason probably won't be out there. I can see Kenyon Green and Juice Scruggs, specifically Juice Scruggs, getting some run. I think both of those young men need to be out on their field. But I think this is an opportunity to do a couple of things. Give him more reps. Ideally, that was the game plan going into game 2, but the defense did not get off the field, so that affected CJ not getting that opportunity, right? Again, only 12 passing attempts in game 2, 16 in the first 2 preseason games. That's not enough to get a full evaluation on what that quarterback can do as a young rookie against another team. Though all of the things we've seen in preseason and training camp have been promising, I want to see it against somebody else. In the black and gold New Orleans Saints, who better to see that against? But I also want to see him out there on the field against another team with John Mechie lined up and him being able to make a play, with Tank Dell out on the field, with X Hutchinson out on the field, with Nico Collins still out on the field, honestly. Let's get him an opportunity with his playmaker so he can build that rapport by getting those important reps in. I think he should be playing, whether it's a half or quarter. I think he needs to be on the field for the Houston Texans, no doubt about it.
With the quarterback and with everyone, I think what we can do is we can kind of simulate as close as possible, right? We don't want to go all in on simulating all game plan type work week, but we can give them, different looks that they'll see from the Saints as best we can to simulate that. It won't be, of course, as good as the joint practices actually going against a different opponent, different scheme, but we'll try to get it as close as possible. And as long as our guys, at the end of the day, as long as our guys are prepared, we know what to do, we know how to do it, and we go control what we can control, I think that'll be very beneficial for us.
That was Coach D'Amico Ryans talking about reps going into Sunday's game. I would like to add this, John, and I agree with you. If your name isn't Laramie Tunsil, Shaq Mason, the Damian Pierce, or Devin Singletary on that offensive side of the ball, you better be playing some type of game inside the Superdome on Sunday night.
Hot take. I think Devin Singletary needs to be out on that field as well.
I didn't see that coming.
Hot take. I think Damian Pierce needs to be out on that field as well. Yeah. Also, I think this is the perfect opportunity for D'Amico Ryans to figure out, without going against somebody else, to give himself and his coaching staff an opportunity. By the way, Matt Burke did call the defensive plays against Miami. Figure out what went wrong and how we can get better at it without having the interference of another team, without having the distractions of another team. So I think that we're looking at a position, we're looking at a new head coach in a position of wanting to shore up everything he possibly can before week 1. And I think we're looking at this week of practice, what they're going to go through before preseason. All of this is an extension of them preparing for the Baltimore Ravens and the rest of the 2023-24 NFL season. So I'm okay with them not doing joint practice. I know a lot of people are looking forward to it because of how fun they can get, how much fights we can get in. Like I love the fights, Christian Harris, Christian Tyson. But at the same time, this is his opportunity, his way of just saying, you know what? Let me pull back a little bit and go back and worry about my X's and O's. And then figure out who's doing what at practice and looking at their game tape, comparing it to figure out, hey, do we really need you on this franchise right now? We like you, but we don't. We think there's somebody that's a little bit better. So overall, I'm okay with the non-joint practices. I think this is smart on D'Amico Ryans' behalf. And I know somewhere Nick Caserio is involved with this as well. And the ghost of Jack Easterby. Should I say that or not? Let me not say that. But I'm okay with it. Game time. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and much more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find the tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Guys, you can't beat that. You're not beating that, right? Snag tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this latest installment of Locked On Texans. As I mentioned, John and myself, we're going to break down and look at players whose stock has risen and whose stock has fallen throughout training camp and the first 2 preseason games. Tomorrow we're going to do defense, which means we're going to do the offense. And we're going to start with players whose stock has risen throughout training camp and preseason. And John, this one might surprise you given my take prior to training camp, but I really do believe that running back Mike Boone, his stock has risen throughout training camp, man. And you know, coming into camp, coming into preseason, I did not give Boone a fair chance. But I think he is the perfect example of what training camp and preseason can do for a guy who is hoping to make this 53-man roster. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, when I revisit my notes from training camp, when I look back at the film, when I look back at some of the preseason footages, he is a guy that you want to see from your number 3 running back. Because remember, that was a topic of conversation for a lot of people. Who's going to be that 3rd running back behind Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary? And When you look at what Mike Boone can do, not only in the rushing game, but in a passing attack as well, we saw it in the game against the Miami Dolphins, but more so we saw it in that New England Patriots game, in the game where he rushed an average of 6.3 yards on 4 carries. However, I think the biggest positive for Mike Boone is his ability to help in pass protection. And I do understand when we was looking at this position group prior to the start of training camp, but you and I was really high on Dare Ogunbowale to make this team, especially given his ability to be a pass catcher out of the backfield. However, I think with the addition of Devin Singletary this year, Dare Ogunbowale will not have that much value in terms of making the 53-man roster. However, when you look at Mike Boone, this is a guy who can not only be a pass catcher coming out of the backfield, but when you need him, he can actually be a really good blocker. I understand when you look at the last 2 seasons that he spent in Denver, injuries really hampered his ability to showcase that attribute as a pass protector. However, I went all the way back and saw what he did in Minnesota. In 2019 and 20, according to Pro Football Focus, he finished with a pass protection grade of 70.5. That is going to be really important for the Houston Texans, especially given that the first 2 games of the season, especially the season opener, you know that offensive line is still going to be hindered due to the injury to Titus Howard. Even if Titus Howard does come back, you want to make sure that you have enough guys possible to keep that pocket clean for your rookie quarterback, CJ Stroud, because yes, Titus Howard could come back, but he's not going to be 100%. And we all know the cleaner that you keep that pocket for CJ Stroud, the better that he's going to be. And I think Mike Boone is definitely going to have a big hand in that.
I like Mike Boone making this team. I do. I also look at Steven Sims as a guy that I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know where he was going to fit on this roster. But you see Houston trying to give him opportunities. So even if he doesn't make the roster for Houston, somebody should come call on Steven Sims. Had that one kickoff return, for 42 yards against the Dolphins. So that was a big play for him to kind of separate himself from everybody else. Also, Tank Dell and John Mechie, they have not been getting an opportunity to show what they can do on a consistent basis. And so I think as a returner, Steven Sims really has made it difficult for Houston to move on from him. And I don't know, Cody, stop me. I don't know if they even want to put Mechie back there.
No, they first of all, at least
I remember them playing around with the punt return, but that was very seldom. I haven't seen much from it since.
Yeah, and I was going to say I don't think that's something they're really going to look into, because I remember early on in training camp they kind of experimented with the idea, but it seemed like he was having problems catching a return. So that only lasted for like the first week, and after that we have not seen John Mechie back there at all.
So I like Mechie back there, honestly. I mean, I like Steven Sims back there for Houston, showing he's able to do something. Also, I'm looking at Dater. I'm looking at Michael Dater. No Scott Quisenberry. Jared Patterson is listed as a center and guard, but he's also a rookie. He hasn't necessarily created separation from anybody else. I think Dater would be a very good a veteran backup to have, just in case maybe Juice is going through one of those rough, like I hope Juice doesn't have a Kenyon Green moment where it seems like every week the best nose tackle in the NFL is coming to Houston. But just bearing any injury, or if you need to switch him out to allow him to calm down a little bit, I like Michael Dater making this team. I really do. And again, no Scott Quisenberry. He's going to be out for the full year. So do I believe that that's helped Dater? I do. But Dater hasn't been necessarily terrible. He hasn't been bad, and you need that depth just in case. So I like Dater making this team as well. Those are my 3 right now that I was looking at those guys kind of like, I don't know about you. I don't know about you. I don't know about you. But I've liked some of the things that they've done in Houston so far. Hey guys, our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So With draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Looking for a player to take in your fantasy football draft who will spark his new team offense and also help you speed to victory? Well, then use a luxury pick on Bears wide receiver DJ Moore. It didn't take long for former Panther to go from 0 to 60 in a big trade, cruising into this easy role as Justin Fields' new go-to guy. Moore was fine in Carolina, but he will perform better than ever while dominating targets from a young quarterback in Chicago. Vinny Iyer from Locked On Fantasy Football is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. Same with your vehicle. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, tail lights, alternators, shock struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it, and they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car because eBay Guaranteed Fits help you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the very first time. So, for the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check, get the right parts, the right fit, and the right price at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Guaranteed. eBay Guaranteed Fit only for available to customers in the U.S. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. So we're kind of playing the Dow Jones game. We're looking at the stock market, and if you would have put money in this, you may could tell your boss to get out of your face, you quit. But if you put money in this, you may have to pick up some extra hours at work. And so we're looking at whose stock is falling, Cody, on the offensive side of the ball. And I'm going to say a name, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to say this name. I'm not going to give an explanation for this player. I'm going to let Cody do it. Some of y'all been waiting for 3 years, but the realization has kicked in. The reality set in. And even when they're phantom lease, they don't want to get in. Brevin Jordan stock has completely failed, plummeted. If you bought stock in Brevin Jordan, you need extra hours at work and maybe in this U.S. economy, 2 more jobs. I love Brevin Jordan coming out. I love this personality. This was a make or break offseason for him. And you know what? He didn't get on the field to prove it. I don't think he makes this roster.
Man, it's hurt me to come to the realization for this, man. I know some of the viewers and listeners probably be laughing because I remember when we did our training camp preview, I talked about how high I was on Brevin Jordan, did a one-on-one with him and stuff, and I just thought that this was going to be the year that Brevin Jordan finally breaks free, but unfortunately, John, I want to look at it from a standpoint and just say the injuries. I believe he's dealing with a hamstring injury as of right now. He has missed the last 2 weeks of training camp. However, prior to the injury, he still wasn't giving this team much through training camp. And I think when I look at Brevin Jordan, this was definitely a missed opportunity for him because there was a moment where Dalton Schultz and Tegan Quatoriano was out. And unfortunately, it wasn't him running with the first team. It was Jordan Murray. By the way, the undrafted rookie from Hawaii. He is one of those guys that you look at and say his stock has risen. He might not make the 53-man roster, but I can definitely see him making a practice squad. And, given, injuries or whatever the case might be, he's definitely somebody that Texans can call up and help them out for a game or a couple games throughout the season. But Brevin Jordan, man, I hate to say it. Everyone knows that's my guy. But give
it up.
Looking at not only training camp, but I also go back to film footage of last year. 3 healthy scratches. Everybody already know the story. And he was kind of in this position last year as well. The 2022 campaign was a very important year, a very important season for Brevin Jordan. Got hurt early. Then they go out and bring back Jordan Akins, and then next thing you know, his starting job is completely gone. So, hopefully I'm wrong, but I truly do not see Brevin Jordan making a 53-man roster on August 29th. It's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, the NFL is a business. And when you take a look at what a guy like I just mentioned, Jordan Murray has been able to showcase. I understand Tegan Couturiano didn't have the best game on Saturday. However, ever since he's been back from injury, he has looked like tight end number 2, and everybody already know what Dalton Schultz can do. So I hate to say it, man, but Brevin Jordan is one of those guys.
The tight end 2 and 3 position is so up for grabs because I actually don't think Jordan Murray is going to make the team. I think
that's why I say practice squad. He's
a practice squad player. Yeah, I like what he's been able to do in practice, but he hasn't done anything in the game. Eric Tomlinson has looked good for Houston.
Mason Strick, that is another guy.
Strick is another guy. I didn't want to. Just kind of go see what Houston do with him. I see them carrying 3 tight ends, mainly using one for special teams, but as a backup. Kind of the same thing that was going on in San Fran. Jimmy Marissi is a guy that I think is getting up out of here too. You don't keep Michael Data and keep Jimmy Marissi. So I think that he will no longer be a Houston Texan when the final cut down day is here.
There's one name we're missing, and maybe it's going to come down between who they want as a backup tackle. Charlie Heck or George Fent?
I'm keeping Fent.
I am too, man. I never got.
Honestly, I wanted to put Austin Deculus on that cut list.
No, you can't put Austin Deculus on there because look, here's the one thing. I think with Austin Deculus, he's only going into his second season.
So is Thomas Booker. When we talk about the defense, there's no reason for Thomas Booker to be on his roster anymore.
Well, we definitely got to get into that because I definitely don't see Thomas Booker getting cut because at least he has some film where you can say, okay, he's showing some promise. I don't see that out of Austin Deculus, but why are you laughing? I don't see that. I don't. Tomorrow's gonna be one of them first take episodes probably, but I don't see Austin Deculus only because he is young and it's still like, okay, what can this young man do if you put him in the right system? Brevin Jordan, yes, I understand consistency has not gone his way. 3 head coaches, 3 offensive coordinators, and about 3-4 quarterbacks that he has played with only in a 3-year span. I just don't see it for Brevin Jordan. And then I don't see him going. I don't see Austin Deculus going through the gauntlet that he has to go through like Brevin Jordan. Just take a look at the tight ends that we just named. Mason Strick, I can definitely see him making a 53-man roster and being that tight end that they utilize in special teams. And unfortunately, that can't be Brevin Jordan because one of the knock against him that we have continuously talked about ever since he's been drafted has been his blocking. So, but I say all that just to say, I don't see Charlie Heck making this 53-man roster. He has been dealing with some type of disclosed injury the entire training camp. And I think the emergence of a guy like George Fant, even though I'm not a big George Fant guy, I can definitely see the Texans moving on from him as well.
Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans. Subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texan podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Give me a follow as well. Give me a shout out as well at John_Hickman12. Again, that is John_Hickman12.
Before moving on really quick, would you say his stock has declined? Darrell Goombawale.
Decline.
I think so. Especially given the emergence of Mike Boone.
Yeah, his stock has declined harder than when I found out I didn't have no more refund check money.
Oh, what was that Lamar card they used to give us?
Oh, man. I'm sorry, sir. It declined.
But as always, you can follow me on The artist formerly known as Twitter is now known as X at Cody Davis _24. Once again, that's Cody COTY DAVIS _24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.